Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelley.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2, where we take on the top issues of the week. On the right is John Hancock.
Happy Easter.
On the left, Michael Kelley.
Happy Easter.
And I'm Andy Banker. Happy Easter as well. On the agenda, Missouri-based Bass Pro, friend or foe of the Trump White House, the mega outdoor store, is suing the federal government for a refund of millions of dollars in Trump tariffs. Also dumping the dumpsters, a task force pushes St. Louis to get rid of residential trash dumpsters in city alleys, which they say act as a magnet in the ongoing plague of illegal dumping in St. Louis. Plus, demand a recount. Area voters blow the whistle on a tax issue on the March 17th primary ballot. The issue won approval with 100% of the vote. No one voted no on a tax hike. What does that say about our election integrity? And our quote of the week is a doozy. It's from the New York Mets broadcasting team, appalled by the peopleless streets of downtown St. Louis during Wednesday's Mets-Cardinals game. Pam Bondi now on her way out as U.S. Attorney General. We'll dig into that. And can the Artemis II space mission reunite the United States? We begin with St. Louis's mayor and the fire chief declaring lessons learned and improvements made after the city failed to properly warn residents of the deadly May 16th tornado nearly 11 months ago, with severe weather season once again upon the St. Louis region. For much of the city, including the areas where the tornado actually struck, there was no warning from the city's warning sirens. The mayor, in office for only a month when the tornado hit, later learned that the city's emergency management team was woefully understaffed and underfunded, and that emergency response protocols had not been updated for more than 20 years. She says all that has changed now. A tornado warning last month with potential for tornadoes in St. Louis again put all those changes to the test.
We had an advanced briefing, we had a unified command, we had direct coordination with the National Weather Service, and the sirens activated automatically. None of that existed 11 months ago. We inherited a system that was not where we wanted it to be. It was not where we needed it to be, and we're still not all the way there. But over the last 321 days, we have made real measurable progress in rebuilding it stronger, more coordinated, and more resilient than ever. We have invested in the systems, and we have strengthened our partnerships, and we built a foundation that did not exist before.
Building a foundation, she says, that did not exist before. She says 3 tornado sirens still do not work, but there are mobile units in place that are working. The test showed that until permanent upgrades can be made. Progress, John and Michael, is it enough?
Well, it's a basic government service. It seems to be, especially here in the Midwest. So I'm grateful that they've made this. Should never have happened last year. And hopefully these plans and what they've put in place will make sure it never happens again.
What do you think?
They test these things every month, the first Monday of the month, right? And it's been 20 years since anybody's serviced these things. How does a city government go 20 years without recognizing they've got a problem? I just find the whole thing to be outrageous. It's not her fault, but I find the whole thing to be outrageous.
That's what I want to get to. I mean, this all happened a month or so after she took office. How much of it falls on her, or does she get credit for saying the buck stops here, I'm doing something about it? Do you think something would have been done had Mayor Jones won re-election over Spencer?
Well, something would have gotten done after what happened, but this is one of the consequences that we're seeing in St. Louis. This is not a unique story that things are being neglected. We're watching water pipes burst on a daily basis as well from neglect.
Yeah, I think that's right. The infrastructure in the cities is poor. The tax base, revenue base is dwindling as people leave. There's a host of problems here.
Well, yeah, and for years on this program, John and Michael have been saying the city needs to return to nuts and bolts issues that have to do with actually running a city. For instance, the city's ongoing crisis when it comes to picking up the garbage. A mayoral task force is recommending sweeping changes now on that front, namely dumping the dumpsters. The vast majority of city residents throw their trash in alley dumpsters. The Post-Dispatch reports that the task force has found the dumpsters to be magnets for illegal dumping, which leads to alleys being smothered in garbage from people who don't live in the city, just dumping it here. The task force recommends switching to roll carts citywide, along with raising trash fees and reviving curbside recycling. Kind of the same question I just asked you, John and Michael. Is this enough? There have been calls for the city to contract out for garbage service and get rid of the refuse division altogether. It's been years since they've been able to fully staff the
Yeah,
division.
bingo. That's your answer right there. Hire a company that does this professionally and does it well. Your residents pay whatever the wage is that they have to pay, and get the city out of the trash business. I think the city ought to be out of the trash business. I think they ought to be out of the water business, frankly. Let companies that do this do it well.
Michael?
Well, that's just it. And, there's 3 million people in this region, and there's only 250,000 or so of them that have a city trash service. This can be done by private contractors. Privatization is not always a bad word. It works in other places. It will work in the cities, particularly in a place where they can't do the basics.
And aside from having a contractor doing it better than the city can, is there an added benefit? Will it free up the city to focus on other services that maybe they can do better?
This seems to be a constant crisis of them trying to find ways to deal with the problems with city trash. Maybe they could address some of the other crises that exist by taking this off the
There's
table.
no reason for the city to be in the trash business.
There's alarming news from the March 17th primaries in Illinois. Voters cried foul after the vote count from the Madison County Clerk in Edwardsville showed a pair of tax issues passing with no one and nearly no one voting no. Look at these election results for a pair of measures to benefit the Long Lake Fire Protection District in Granite City. Issue 1 passed with more than 99% of the voters voting yes, 383 to 2. Issue 2 passed with 100% of the vote, 327 to 0. Voters contacted Fox 2 News. They contacted county officials. A court-ordered recount has now been completed. The county clerk admits the county failed to calculate no votes because of what she called a clerical format irregularity in the voting software. So look at the new numbers after the recount. The two measures still passed, but the vote totals were drastically different. The vote for issue 1 was 447 to 346. 44% voted no instead of less than 1%. Issue 2 passed 503 to 328. John and Michael, does this raise any questions about election integrity, small scale, large scale, across the board?
I don't get this at all. That looked like my performance in the city of St. Louis back when I ran for Secretary of State. But the equipment is supposed to be tested before the election. That's what election authorities do. And if it was an equipment malfunction, they should have flagged that. And when you get results like that on a tax measure, if you're the county clerk over there, you look at that and you say, that doesn't add up, and you look into it before you release those numbers publicly.
Should it take, the hundreds of voters who voted no saying, hey, we voted no, how could it be 0?
Common sense could have looked at those numbers and said, this isn't right. What this tells me is that it's a shame they sent them out the way they did, but the state of Illinois, who ultimately has jurisdiction over all elections that take place in Illinois, should be doing some type of revision, looking in this process to make sure that it's safe and secure going forward. That was not.
They'll be watching the vote count closely in the race for a seat in Congress from Missouri, long held by Congressman Sam Graves. Graves represents Missouri's 6th district, which stretches all the way from the Mississippi River in Lincoln County to the Kansas and Nebraska borders on the other side of the state. It includes Troy, Bowling Green, and Hannibal, along with suburban Kansas City and St. Joseph. The Republican Graves has held the seat for 25 years. John, because of the retirement, filing reopens for 3 days this week, Tuesday through Friday. One opponent has already labeled Graves and his endorsed candidate as anti-Trump Republicans. Could this still be a referendum on the president, even if the seat remains red, as it likely will?
Well, Republican primaries to this point, not being opposed by Donald Trump is a kiss of death in Republican primaries. Now, that may be changing. I don't know. This will be a good test of that in this Missouri 6th congressional district.
A lot can happen before August.
Right.
Primary date in Missouri.
Yeah, but I mean, in a Republican primary, in a Republican district, Donald Trump is always on the ballot.
How do you see it?
Well, I think it's a failure of Donald Trump, and the reason that we've redrawn these lines where we have something going from the east to the west side is solely because he wanted to be able to steal a seat from Kansas City. Putting that aside, this seat's going to stay red. How they food fight it out in the Republican Party, I have no clue, particularly in a district that looks as janky as that.
Still to come on Hancock and Kelley, widely viewed as a conservative Republican-leaning mega business, Missouri-based Bass Pro Shops takes issue with President Trump's tariffs and takes the federal government to court, hoping for a windfall in the millions of dollars.
To hear more, listen to the podcast. Just search for Hancock and Kelley.
After less than 15 months, President Trump parts ways with Attorney General Pam Bondi. He won't say why he fired her. He won't say that he fired her. Bondi has failed to keep the Epstein files out of the headlines. A lot of pundits say that's a major factor. Instead, she may have done the opposite. The president says she's transitioning to an important job in the private sector, saying she's done a great job cracking down on crime. She's striking a similar tone, praising the president and taking credit for, quote, the lowest murder rate in 125 years and taking custody of 90-plus key cartel figures. I remain eternally grateful, she says, for the trust that President Trump placed in me to make America safe again, end quote. Deputy AG Todd Blanche will serve as acting attorney general. What's really going on here, John Hancock?
Well, he was done using her. He didn't find her to be of use any longer, and so out the door she goes. I mean, it's a fairly standard practice now. I mean, the one thing about having Donald Trump now and entering his 6th year in the presidency, we kind of have all read the playbook.
What did he use her for if he was done using her?
He wanted to cover up the Epstein files. And to prosecute his political enemies, and didn't think she was doing an effective job of that either.
Right, and when the press goes bad for Donald Trump, it's always somebody else's fault, even if they're carrying his water, and that's what we saw here. She will go to the garbage heap of other people who've worked for Donald Trump in the past because he only picks the best people, Andy, but apparently those best people only last so long for him.
Every attorney general this guy has appointed, he has absolutely thrown under the bus, whether it's Jeff Sessions, remember that guy? Bill Barr eventually got tossed under the bus late, and now Pam Bondi's, she's under the...
Worth noting, as loyal viewers will remember, that when we do our Valentine special and make you guys pick a Valentine from the other side, she was Michael's Republican Valentine, remember?
I'll still take her out for a drink.
All right. Missouri-based Bass Pro Shops are suing the federal government over President Trump's tariffs. The suit alleges the tariffs imposed by the president under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act have been ruled unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court since then. So, therefore, the federal government should refund the tariff revenue paid by Bass Pro. The suit alleges, quote, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down these tariffs. Accordingly, plaintiff seeks a full refund of IEEPA duties plaintiff has paid to the United States. There's no dollar amount specified, but it is expected to be well in the millions of dollars, with U.S. Customs estimating that $166 billion in tariffs were collected before the Supreme Court struck them down. Two things, John and Michael: should companies like Bass Pro have these tariffs refunded? And the suit and others just like it, there's a wave of them now. Are they just more signs of cracks in the MAGA base?
Yeah, and let's be clear, Johnny Morris, who owns Bass Pro, this is not some Democrat. This is a Republican stalwart who's out there saying we want our money back. Yeah, they should refund it. Tariffs are bad public policy, apparently, if you're a conservative. It's a shame that they didn't stand up earlier against Donald Trump, and now we're having to go through this process.
Is this just about money, or is it signs of erosion in support for Donald Trump?
I wouldn't read that into it. I think it's about money. They were taxed illegally. The Supreme Court said they want their money back. I ask, where's our money? Because we're the ones that pay it. Every time you go out there and buy a Rebel lure for your fishing pole out there, Andy, you're paying a tariff on that.
He doesn't even know what a Rebel lure looks like.
Mr. Snooker talking.
I used to watch Virgil Ward every Saturday.
Yeah, Mr. Bill Dance over there.
Coming up, our quote of the week: the visiting broadcast team from the New York Mets paints a dismal picture of downtown St. Louis. A cheap shot or just the honest truth? And America returns to the moon. How far can the Artemis II mission go toward uniting a very divided nation? The United States launched a rocket for the moon Wednesday, and it felt like a blast from the past, with the nation's hopes and dreams seeming to ride with 4 astronauts on board, 3 from the U.S., 1 from Canada. They are now out there in the great beyond, the mission seen as paving the way for an eventual base on the moon, a stopover point for an eventual manned mission to Mars. And they're on that figure-8 path right now, going to slingshot around the moon and back. John and Michael, you should have seen our newsroom. Just absolutely came to a halt during the launch, right when we're on the air with our 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 7 p.m. newscasts. Everyone just stopped and watched. And there just seemed to be this sense of pride and unity and a common hope that I haven't felt for a while. Is that overstating it?
No, I was in a restaurant where everybody stopped to watch it take off, and I think it's impactful. I mean, some of the pictures we're starting to see from there, when you look back at the Earth, you don't see borders, you don't see war, you don't see red, you don't see blue. We start to realize that this whole thing is bigger than whatever we've made it inside of our own minds. I think this is an awesome thing. Space exploration is something we should keep the pedal to the metal on and never walk away from because it costs too much.
John?
Did you see that liftoff?
Yeah.
Man, that was like me after eating a bean burrito.
Oh.
I mean, that sucker, that was incredible. And I do think this unifies the country. I mean, I think this is something we all can take great national pride in, that the United States of America is sending a manned expedition back to the moon, and I wish them Godspeed on the way back.
If you're old enough to remember, it reminds you of the early shuttle missions or the moon missions long ago, doesn't it? I mean, everyone just kind of stopped and watched. Unfortunately, I remember the Challenger crash when I was in college.
Yep.
But we all stopped. I was meeting a friend for lunch that day in a dorm.
Yeah.
And we stopped to watch the launch.
Yep. 5-year-old me, Andy, sit down in front of the Curtis Mathis there in the living room, watching the men get out of that Apollo.
I read it in a book.
Curtis Mathis was an old-time TV.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Now to our quote of the week. The New York Mets took on the Cardinals at Busch Stadium for 3 games in the past week. The Cardinals excelled on the field, taking 2 out of 3. During the final game Wednesday afternoon, with beauty shots of the Arch and Keener Plaza on the screen during the Mets TV broadcast, Mets broadcasters ripped downtown St. Louis, saying there are few signs of life and you never see any people walking around. Turning to apocalyptic terms in our quote of the week. Quote, remember the old neutron bomb that wouldn't knock buildings down but just eliminate all the people? It looks like one of those hit St. Louis. So John and Michael, if you're a St. Louisan, a Cardinal fan, the team owner, the mayor, the governor of Missouri, how do you take this?
Well, I mean, it's objectively true what they said. I mean, we work downtown. I don't see foot traffic very often. Now, if there's an event, like we had the figure skating and we had the NCAA here.
Opening day,
then yes, it looks like a great, vibrant city, but most days it looks like it looked on Wednesday.
Couple of things here. Yeah, it stings when somebody comes from outside the network and tells us, hey, things aren't right here. But I don't think what they said is any different than what we've all said here on this set, day in and day out. What surprises me is the outrage that's coming from the community. People are, I guess, mad that the Pond Scum Mets folks are out there saying that about us. But really, we ought to take that energy and anger that we've been expressing all this week at the Mets fans and maybe turn it internal, because my entire life, we'd have had this conversation about how we have to turn St. Louis around and realize that we're in this together. And instead, we're going to point our finger at the other side than fixing our problems.
And one of those broadcasters, the Cardinal draft choice, played many seasons as a catcher and third baseman here in the early 1990s, Todd Zeal.
Yeah, so he knows, and when he played here, it was a little different. I mean, downtown's never been super bustling in my lifetime, but it used to be much different than it is now. Now it is largely a ghost town. So if you're the mayor, and I include the governor because he's a St. Louis, how do you sleep at night knowing that this is the perception, and it's a perception based largely on reality?
If you can't sleep at night over it, you need to get to work. And it would be helpful, and you mentioned it, the mayor, the county executive, the collar counties on the other side of the river. What is happening in this city matters to your existence. While it may be dead in the city of St. Louis, I can promise you it's affecting you in other parts of the region. We all have to fix this problem and find a way to bring life, energy, commerce, and people back to downtown.
Residents. We need residents.
And it feels like it's really on the governor's radar to you?
I do, yeah.
Right? All right, final thoughts are next. First, drone fox over a train chugging along the Missouri River in Washington, Missouri. You know what? This really is a nice part of the country to be living in, isn't it? Feels that way when you look at that. Final thoughts, Michael Kelley.
Yes, happy Easter, happy spring, but most importantly, happy start to the best week of the year. Yes, that's right. The Masters starts tomorrow.
A tradition like no other.
Yeah, that's what they say. We celebrate Easter Sunday this morning. And for those who believe this is the greatest day on the calendar. And so I wish all of you that are celebrating today a very happy and blessed Easter Sunday morning.
I echo that. Happy Easter to everyone and happy Passover. Remember, if it's Sunday in St. Louis, it's Hancock and Kelley on Fox 2. We'll see you next week.